Welcome back to Machines Inc. and Jeep Winter Build Series, Episode 3. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Jake, and today we're going to be continuing this Jeep Winter Build Series. First episode, we went ahead and put on some frame stiffeners on this Jeep. The second episode, we put on a new 3-link from Iron Rock Off-Road. Now that we've got that on there and we've got the axle located exactly how we want it, I want to go through and trim up anywhere that these tires rub at full compression and full flex. This is something that I don't see a lot of people cover, and especially with new Jeep folks on forums, there's always the question of what size tires with what size lift can I fit? And the answer is you can pretty much fit whatever tire you want with whatever size lift if you're willing to cut enough off of here. So before we dive into flex testing and trimming on this car, the biggest thing we need to address is your shocks and your bump stops. So first off, your bump stops are there to prevent your shocks or axle from bottoming out and hitting anything that it shouldn't. So your bump stop is what you actually want to be the hard stop when your axle comes up all the way through your travel, to prevent any further damage. Now, when you're setting up your bump stops and your shocks, generally you want to have your bump stops contact when you have around a ½ inch or so of shock travel left. But if we don't already have our bump stop set up properly, then we're not going to know where our axle is actually going to end, and this is going to cause all the trimming to be a big issue. You can see here, I have up into the top around a ½ inch of travel on the shock before my bump stop contacts. And right now I have the vehicle lifted all the way up to where I'm kind of compressing those bump stops as much as possible. If I didn't compress those, you might see around 1 inch or so of shock travel left. So where I like to start off is you're gonna go ahead and jack the vehicle up, put it on jack stands, drop that front axle down, yank your coil springs out, and then unbolt your sway bar and secure that up out of the way. Your coil springs and your sway bar are going to be the two things that are prevent us from being able to hit full bump and to be able to get full articulation out of the axle easily with just a jack. Now that we have it lifted up, I like to generally start in the full bump position. So we're going to jack the axle all the way up till it crushes into the bump stops. So let's go ahead and toss the tire on and we can start checking to see where we rub. Alright, so this is our tire in the full stuff, pointed straight position. Like I said, generally you're not going to have too many issues with the vehicle rubbing in that direction, but where you are going to have issues is with turning left to right in full bump and flexed out in full bump. So in this frontal position, all the way lock, already took a look below, don't have any rubbing. Now, if I move it out just a little bit, we do have a little bit of contact of the tire on this fender. You can see it moving a little bit. So with this, what I'm going to do, since it's a black fender, just going to use a silver Sharpie so it shows up nice. And I'm just going to mark a dotted line on the inside of here, just kind of eyeballing where it looks like it needs to be cut to make sure the tire, wouldn't contact. Now I'm going to turn the tire in the opposite direction and go ahead and do the same thing. Alright, so now that I've gone through and completed that on both sides, now comes the fun and the tricky part. We're going to go ahead and flex this thing out completely. Generally, flexed out is when you're going to get the wilder angles that are going to cause a lot of rubbing. So to flex the axle out in your garage definitely can be a little bit tricky, especially if you have a decent amount of travel. So the shocks on this Jeep are 14-inch travel shocks. So I don't really have any jack stands to get this thing up off the ground high enough to be able to get that full flex and articulation. But what we're going to do, we'll start off with this passenger side first. I'm going to remove the wheel and tire off of the driver's side, and that will allow that side of the axle to droop even further since the tire's not going to contact the ground. And what we want to do is we want to put our passenger side all the way up to full bump, and we want to put our driver's side all the way down at full extension. Alright, so you can see when we really start to flex it out is when we really start to have our problems. It's totally smashed up into the bottom of the fender here, totally crumpled and buckled up the front, and I started to pull the fender out. So, like I said, flexing is really the biggest issue that you're going to have with clearance, and this is what just a lot of people never see because they don't have a great way to flex it out at home. But like I said, with some jack stands and a jack, you can get this done to be able to kind of test and clearance before you go on the trail and start ripping a bunch of parts off. Actually, on the other side, I'll show you guys, part of the fender I actually snapped off at one point on the trail because these tires cruising through, just zero clearance, grabbed part of the fender and snapped it off, and actually flung it like 20 feet off in the woods, but went and picked it up and plastic welded it back on there. but I want to prevent that from happening in the future. So that's why we're going through and doing this flex testing now. So after flexing everything out, taking a look, marking some portions with a Sharpie, I really determined, I think the best way that we're going to get the most clearance out of these is to pretty much trim the entire inside of the fender out. So let's get to slicing. Well, flex test number 2 did not go great. Essentially, since I cut the inside of the fenders here, the tire still goes up and actually hits the fender. This is not full flex right now. And by cutting out the inside of it, all I did was provide a lip to where once the tire tucked inside, when it comes back out, it just wants to yank this fender back out. Where we're gonna start now is I'm gonna mark midway on this portion up and cut on there, and hopefully will give me enough clearance to get up back and forth. So let's start cutting some more off. Not gonna lie, I thought this Highline cut was gonna look like absolute trash. It's really not that bad. So let's go ahead and flex it out, and fingers crossed it is not hitting anymore, but we'll see. Alright, so it actually fits up in there pretty good. Doesn't touch the outside lip of the fender. We are still touching just a little bit in the front, as you can see when I marked that off, so we're gonna go ahead and slice that. So in that last flex test, flexing all the way up, we were totally clear to the whole top, totally flexed out, totally turned lock to lock, good to go. Stoked on that. The next 2 points that are hitting is this front corner piece right here, which I figured it was because I did see the witness marks on it. So this corner portion right here is right underneath the battery tray, but the battery tray sits a couple inches above, and this is just open space. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm actually just gonna grab a big sledgehammer and try to beat that up in and beat it out of the way. If that doesn't work, or if it looks like total trash, we can just cut this portion out, put a patch piece in, and weld it in. But if I can get away with just smacking it, I will definitely go that route. The second portion is this pinch weld down here. Same thing that we had on the other side. I'm just gonna hit this and fold it in. It wasn't in the way much, but just would like to get it out of the way as much as possible. And then we will test again. So let's get to smacking. Alright guys, so we got this thing all trimmed up and no more rubbing when all flexed out, which I am super excited about because it is not fun to listen to these big knobs just eat through the fenders every time it flexes out. This is definitely something, if you guys want to put bigger tires on any car, this is definitely important to kind of test out and flex before you go hit the trails. Mostly just because if it does tear something off or break something, you'd much rather that happen in the garage and not out in the middle of nowhere. As far as this cut goes on the fender, I'm actually pretty stoked with how it turned out. I thought this kind of Highline cop cut was going to look like trash, but I think it looks actually way better than how these things came out of the box. So you guys let me know what you think. So if you guys did enjoy watching today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more Jeep content and some more off-roading content, subscribe to the channel. I'm Jake with Machines Incorporated. As always, thanks for watching.